The clock on the wall blinked 11:47 p.m., but for Alina Reyes, time had stopped meaning anything hours ago. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep, her back ached, and her stomach had forgotten what food tasted like. County General's night shift was always chaos, a storm of noise, motion, and exhaustion, but tonight felt worse. Reyes, Trauma Bay 3 needs you, someone shouted across the hallway. I'm already in 4, she yelled back, balancing in 4 bag in one hand and a chart in the other. Her patient, a young man with a drug overdose, had finally stabilized. Alina recorded his vitals, her handwriting jagged from fatigue. She was about to sign out when the automatic ER doors burst open with a crash. 5-year-old male. Unresponsive, seizure activity ongoing, yelled the paramedic. His voice sliced through the noise like a blade. Alina's pen dropped from her hand. She ran toward the gurney. The child's body convulsed violently, small hands jerking against the white sheets. The heart monitor beeped too fast, too loud. His skin looked pale, his lips slightly blue. The paramedic rattled off vitals, but the details blurred in her ears. All she could focus on was the child. Get Dr. Harris in here now, she called, checking the 4-line. Oxygen at 10 liters. Dr. Harris, the senior resident, rushed in with a calm that came from routine chaos. Seizures started en route? He asked the paramedics. 3 minutes ago, no response to medication, one replied. Let's go again, Dr. Harris said, grabbing a syringe. Alina watched the boy's face. There was something strange. The twitch in his right arm stronger than the left, the sluggish reaction of his pupils. Her gut tightened. This wasn't a typical seizure. The attending physician, Dr. Morrison, appeared just as Dr. Harris administered the next dose. Increased to 5 milligrams. If he doesn't respond, we'll need to intubate. No, Alina whispered before she could stop herself. Both doctors looked up. What did you say, Nurse Reyes? Dr. Harris asked sharply. Alina swallowed hard. His symptoms, they're not symmetrical. Look at his eyes, his skin tone. It's not just epilepsy. It could be. You're out of line, Harris interrupted. Stay in your role, nurse. Alina's heart pounded. She should have backed down. But she couldn't. Not when the boy's tiny chest heaved unevenly. Please, she said, her voice shaking. If this is Reye's syndrome, that medication could make it worse. You need to check ammonia levels. Run the metabolic panel. Enough. Dr. Harris barked. Step back. No, she said louder this time. The word echoed through the room. Dr. Morrison's eyes narrowed, but then something in Alina's tone made him pause. You said Reye's syndrome? Yes, Alina said quickly. Atypical presentation, asymmetrical tremors, delayed pupil response, jaundice starting in the eyes. Look at him. For a second, silence filled the room except for the beeping monitors. Dr. Morrison leaned closer to the boy, then looked back at her. Run ammonia levels, he ordered. Dr. Harris stared in disbelief, but Alina was already moving, drawing blood, her hands steady despite the tremor in her chest. Minutes later, the result flashed on the screen. Ammonia levels 4 times higher than normal. Jesus, Dr. Morrison muttered. You were right. Orders flew fast after that. The correct treatment started, medications changed. Slowly, painfully, the boy's breathing steadied and the tremors began to fade. Alina exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. She stepped back, her heart pounding as relief washed through her. Then the ER doors slammed open again. 6 men in dark suits walked in, all sharp lines and silent danger. Security froze. The air in the room changed, colder, heavier. The man in front moved with quiet authority. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair brushed neatly back. His gaze swept the room, sharp and assessing. Where is my son? He asked. The voice was calm but dangerous, the kind of calm that made people nervous. Dr. Morrison stepped forward. Sir, we're stabilizing him now. Please wait in the consultation. The man's eyes found Alina. And stopped. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room. You, he said quietly. You saved him. Alina hesitated. I helped. The doctors. Don't lie to me, he interrupted. I heard the argument from the hallway. Dr. Harris spoke up, his tone defensive. She broke protocol. She should be written up. The man turned to him, his expression shifting. Not angry, just deadly still. You're saying she overstepped by saving my child? Dr. Harris went pale. That's not what I... Enough. The man reached into his jacket. Security tensed. Instead of a weapon, he pulled out a card and handed it to Dr. Morrison. If she faces any punishment, I will bury this hospital under lawsuits until there's nothing left. Dr. Morrison's eyes widened as he read the name printed in bold. Mr. Voss, he said carefully. Understood. Damien Voss, Alina repeated under her breath. She'd heard that name before, whispered in news reports and rumors. A shipping tycoon, people said. A man whose fortune was built on shadows. Damien turned back to her, his expression unreadable. Your name? Alina. Alina Reyes. He nodded once. You saved my son's life. I don't forget debts, Miss Reyes. He took a final look at his boy, resting now then at her again. For the first time his voice softened slightly. Thank you. Truly. And then he left, leaving the air heavy with a silence that buzzed like static. Alina stood frozen, the adrenaline draining from her body. The monitors beeped steadily, the chaos fading. But the echo of his words remained. You saved my son's life. I don't forget debts. She didn't know it yet, but nothing about her life would ever be the same again. 3 days later, Alina sat outside the hospital boardroom with trembling hands. Her badge hung loosely from her neck. Inside, the administrators were reviewing her case. Hospitals speak for finding someone to blame. Her friend, Dr. Kim, patted her shoulder. You did the right thing, Alina. Everyone knows it. Tell that to Mrs. Patterson, Alina murmured. She's already called me insubordinate twice today. Before Dr. Kim could reply, the door opened. Nurse Reyes, the chief administrator said. We're ready for you. The room smelled of coffee and disinfectant. 3 people sat behind a long table, faces blank with bureaucratic calm. Mrs. Patterson, the chief nursing officer, folded her hands. Miss Reyes, do you understand the seriousness of your actions? Yes, ma'am, Alina said, keeping her voice even. But I also understand that a 5-year-old boy is alive because I spoke up. A muscle twitched in Patterson's jaw. You challenged your superiors. Twice. You created a scene in front of the patient's family. I prevented the wrong medication from killing a child, Alina said softly. The silence stretched until Patterson sighed. You'll receive a formal warning. One more act of insubordination and your employment here will be terminated. Alina nodded, hiding the sting behind her professionalism. Understood. When she walked out, her legs felt weak. 3 years of dedication reduced to a warning slip. She should have felt angry, but all she felt was tired. That night she stayed late, finishing paperwork, trying not to think about dark eyes and whispered threats of lawsuits. By the time she left, the hospital was quiet. The parking garage was nearly empty. Her old sedan waited in its usual corner. She unlocked it, then froze. A figure leaned against the driver's side door. He looked exactly the same as that night. Dark suit, darker eyes, calm like still water hiding something deep beneath. Mr. Voss, she said, clutching her keys like a weapon. Miss Reyes. He straightened, hands in his pockets. You're difficult to reach through official channels. That's usually how hospitals work, she said cautiously. Most people make appointments. I'm not most people. She didn't doubt that for a second. What do you want? She asked. He studied her face for a long moment. To thank you properly. And to make you an offer. I've already been thanked, she said. Twice. Not enough. He took a slow step closer. My son's condition requires constant monitoring. I want to hire you as his personal nurse. Alina blinked. Excuse me. Full-time live-in position. You'd oversee his care, his medication, everything. I'll handle the rest. She shook her head. That's impossible. I have a job. Not anymore, he said quietly. You've been suspended. Alina's heart skipped. How do you know that? I have sources, Damien said simply. And I also know you're drowning in medical bills. Your mother's, specifically. Her throat tightened. That's none of your business. Everything that affects you is my business now. There it was again, that quiet certainty, the tone of a man who never had to ask twice. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a printed contract. Legal, precise, and unbelievable. The salary alone made her breath catch. Enough to pay off every debt she had. This is insane, she said. I barely know you. You know that I keep my word, he replied. And that I protect what's mine. She looked up sharply. I'm not yours. Not yet. The faintest ghost of a smile touched his lips. But you could be. Why me? She demanded. There are hundreds of private nurses more qualified. Because you saved him when no one else could. Because you don't back down. And because my son trusts you. That's rare. Alina's mind raced. Every rational thought told her to walk away. That no amount of money was worth being tied to a man like Damien Voss. But another part of her, the part that still saw Luca's pale face and terrified eyes, hesitated. What about the risks? She asked quietly. People talk about you. About your business. He didn't deny it. People talk because they're afraid of what they don't understand. And should I be afraid? Only if you plan to hurt my son, he said. Otherwise, you're safer with me than anywhere else in this city. The weight of his words sank deep. He meant it. Every syllable. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. He reached into his pocket again, this time handing her a smaller card, black with a single number written in silver ink. When you decide, call this. But don't take too long. Luca needs you. Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing through the garage. The taillights of his car vanished into the dark. Alina stood frozen, the envelope clutched in her hand. She told herself she wouldn't read it. That she'd throw it away. But when she got home she didn't. She opened it. She read every line. Twice. And as dawn light crept through her blinds, one truth settled deep in her chest. The man she should fear most was the one who had just made her the offer of a lifetime. And maybe, just maybe, she was already too curious to say no. The city buzzed beneath gray clouds as Alina stared out the hospital cafeteria window. 3 days had passed since the incident, but the whispers hadn't stopped. Everywhere she went she heard them. That's her. She defied 2 doctors. She was right, though. It should have felt like victory. Instead it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from her friend Serena. You're trending on the hospital gossip board. Hero, nurse, or troublemaker? Take your pick. Alina sighed. Hero, troublemaker. I just wanted to save a child. She looked at her reflection in the dark window. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes tired but steady. Somewhere inside she still believed she'd done the right thing. But right didn't always mean safe. When her supervisor called her into the office she already knew. Alina, Mrs. Patterson said, her tone clipped and cold, you've placed this hospital in a difficult position. Publicity like this attracts unwanted attention. You mean good publicity? Lena asked. We saved a life. You disobeyed orders, Patterson said sharply. You undermined your superiors in front of a family. A family who happens to be grateful, Alina replied before she could stop herself. Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed. Don't test me, Miss Reyes. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay pending further review. The words hit like a punch. Suspended. Be grateful it's not termination. Alina left the office numb. Her hands trembled as she pulled off her badge and dropped it into her bag. By the time she reached the hospital's exit, rain had started. She walked to the bus stop in silence, water soaking through her shoes, her thoughts louder than the thunder above. She'd done everything right. She'd saved a child's life. And yet somehow she was the one punished for it. That night her small apartment felt colder than usual. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. She reheated leftover soup but barely touched it. Her mother's medical bills sat stacked on the counter like quiet accusations. When her phone rang she didn't recognize the number. Hello. Miss Reyes, a calm deep voice said. Her stomach tightened. Mr. Voss. I hear the hospital didn't appreciate your courage. Alina closed her eyes. They suspended me. For saving a life, Damien said softly, a statement not a question. Typical. How do you even know that? I make it my business to know things that matter to me. His voice was steady but something in it made her pulse quicken. Dangerous, yes, but calm, controlled danger. What do you want? She asked, though she already suspected the answer. I offered you a position, remember? I'm giving you another chance to accept. She sighed. I haven't even decided if that's a good idea. I can assure you it is, he said. My son is recovering, but he'll need someone who understands his condition. Someone I can trust. There was a pause, filled only by the rain tapping her window. Damien, she said finally, using his name without meaning to. Your world, it isn't safe. Neither is yours, he replied. You're a nurse working nights in a city that eats its own. At least with me you'll be protected. Protected. The word carried weight when he said it. Still she hesitated. And if I say no? Then I'll find another nurse, he said simply. But she won't be you. The line went quiet, then clicked off. Alina set the phone down, heart pounding. She stared at the contract still lying on her counter, the black ink gleaming faintly in the low light. She should have thrown it away days ago. But she hadn't. And maybe that meant she'd already made up her mind. A week later, Alina found herself standing in front of wrought iron gates taller than any house she'd ever seen. The plaque read Voss Estate in silver letters. Behind it stretched manicured gardens and winding paths leading to a mansion that looked more like a fortress. She had come to discuss the offer. At least that's what she told herself. Just a conversation. Nothing permanent. Nothing dangerous. A voice crackled through the intercom. Name. Alina Reyes. Mr. Voss is expecting me. The gates opened soundlessly like magic. A sleek black car waited just inside. A man in a dark coat stepped out. Miss Reyes, he said. I'm Marco. Mr. Voss's assistant. Please follow me. She climbed into the car, trying not to stare as the estate rolled past. The grounds were endless. Fountains, marble statues, a stretch of trees too perfectly aligned to be natural. When the car stopped, she took a deep breath and stepped out. Damien Voss stood at the top of the stairs, framed by tall glass doors. He wore no tie today, just a crisp white shirt with rolled sleeves. Somehow that made him look even more powerful. Miss Reyes, he greeted, descending the steps. Thank you for coming. She forced herself to meet his gaze. You said it was important. It is, he said, leading her through the front doors. The interior was breathtaking. Marble floors, chandeliers, walls lined with art that probably cost more than her apartment building. But despite the beauty, the air felt watchful. Cameras blinked discreetly from the corners. You live here alone? She asked as they walked. With my son. And staff, he said. Security mostly. Security, she repeated, her eyes catching a man in black stationed near a hallway. Right. He stopped in front of a door and opened it. Inside, a boy sat on a couch watching cartoons. Luca. He looked up, and when his eyes met hers, they lit up. You came. Alina smiled, kneeling down. Of course I did. How are you feeling? Better, Luca said proudly. Papa says I can go outside soon. That's great news. She checked his wrist gently. Pulse steady, skin warm, color good. Relief eased her chest. Damien watched them from the doorway, something unreadable flickering across his face. He doesn't smile like that often, he said quietly. Alina looked up. He's just a kid. He needs warmth, not walls. Walls keep him alive, Damien said simply. Maybe, she replied. But they also keep him lonely. Their eyes met, hers fierce, his guarded. The silence between them hummed with tension neither wanted to name. After a long moment, Damien turned away. Come to my study. We'll discuss terms. The study was dimly lit, shelves filled with old books and soft lamplight. A decanter of whiskey sat on the desk beside two glasses. Damien gestured for her to sit. I'll be direct. I need you full-time here at the estate. Live-in position, complete medical authority regarding Luca's condition. Whatever you need, equipment, medication, staff, it's yours. That's generous, she said cautiously. Almost too generous. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You think I'm trying to buy your loyalty? Aren't you? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I'm trying to buy your presence. Loyalty is earned. And what if I say no? He poured himself a drink. The ice clinked softly. You won't. Confident, aren't you? Just observant, he said. You're here, aren't you? Alina couldn't argue. She looked down at the folder on the desk. A newer version of the contract, this one shorter. Simpler. I've added conditions you mentioned, Damien said. Full autonomy in Luca's medical care. Authority to leave if you ever feel unsafe. Her eyebrows rose. You actually listened. I always listen, he said quietly. Especially to people who earn it. The room fell silent again. The kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was heavy, charged. Finally, Alina exhaled. I'll think about it. Take your time, he said. But not too much. Luca's next evaluation is in 2 weeks. I'd rather it be you handling it. She stood. You really don't give people a chance to say no, do you? I don't like wasting opportunities, he replied. And you, Miss Reyes, are an opportunity one don't intend to waste. As she reached the door, he spoke again. One more thing. She turned. Yes. About the hospital, he said. They won't bother you again. Alina frowned. What do you mean? He sipped his drink. Let's just say they reconsidered their decision. Her stomach dropped. What did you do? I ensured fairness, he said calmly. That's all. You threatened them, didn't you? He met her gaze without blinking. They threatened your career. I corrected it. Alina didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. You can't just fix everything by intimidating people. It works, he said simply. And I don't apologize for protecting what matters. I'm not something you own, she said quietly. No, Damien agreed. You're something I respect. That's rarer. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For a second she saw past the reputation, past the power, and glimpsed something real. And that scared her more than anything else. When Alina returned home that evening, she sat at her kitchen table long after dark. The contract lay open in front of her, her pen hovering above the signature line. She thought of Luca's smile. Of Damien's steady eyes. Of the hospital that had turned its back on her. Of her mother's fading strength. Then she thought of what Damien had said, walls keep him alive. Maybe she could be the one to show that boy light again. Her pen touched the paper. One signature. One moment. And just like that, her life was no longer her own. The next morning her phone rang again. Damien's voice was quiet but certain. When can you start? 1 week, she said. I need to give notice. I'll make sure they let you go early, he replied. That's not how. It is now, he said and hung up. Alina looked around her small apartment. The cracked tile floor, the second-hand couch, the quiet hum of her mother's empty oxygen machine, and knew she couldn't turn back. Whatever waited behind those mansion gates, power, danger, or something she couldn't yet name, she had just stepped toward it willingly. And in her gut she knew one thing with chilling clarity. Damien Voss wasn't just a man you worked for. He was a man who changed everything he touched. The gates of the Voss estate opened with a quiet hum, and Alina's old sedan looked embarrassingly out of place as it rolled through. The driveway stretched endlessly, bordered by trees trimmed with surgical precision. It felt less like a home and more like a fortress pretending to be one. A tall man in black met her at the entrance. Miss Reyes, he said, his voice low and even. I'm Adrian Cole, head of security. Mr. Voss asked me to escort you inside. Do you do that for everyone? She asked, trying to sound casual. Only for people who matter, he said simply. Her suitcase wheels clicked softly across marble as she stepped into the mansion. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Grand staircase, chandeliers, expensive art on every wall. Everything gleamed, but there was no warmth. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was watching her. Adrian led her down a long hallway. Cameras blinked quietly from corners. We monitor everything here, he said as if reading her thoughts. For safety. Yours or mine? She asked. Both. When they reached the east wing, he stopped. This is your suite. Mr. Voss said you'd want privacy and proximity. He opened a door. Luca's room is right through there. The room took her breath away. Sunlight spilling through tall windows, shelves lined with medical monitors, cabinets of neatly arranged supplies. Beyond the connecting door was a smaller room filled with toys, storybooks, and a half-built model train set. She smiled faintly. He likes trains. Obsessed, said a familiar voice behind her. Alina turned. Damien stood in the doorway, his presence filling the space. Today he wore a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up and no tie. Even relaxed, he radiated command. I see you've settled in, he said. I just got here, she said, trying to sound calm. This place, it's incredible. It's a cage with nice walls, he said simply. But Luca's safe here. That's all that matters. He glanced at Adrian. Give us a moment. When they were alone, Damien studied her in silence. It wasn't a cold stare. It was assessing, searching as if trying to read the truth behind her calm face. You're nervous, he said finally. Wouldn't you be, she replied. Your house looks like it belongs in a movie about spies and secrets. Not far off, he said. But you'll get used to it. Do you ever get used to being afraid? She asked quietly. His eyes softened. I stopped being afraid a long time ago. That's what keeps me alive. Something about that answer chilled her, and intrigued her. Before she could respond, a small voice interrupted from behind. Papa. Luca came running down the hall, arms open. Damien bent to catch him mid-run, lifting him easily. Careful, Luca, he said. You'll knock me over. I missed you, Luca said, clinging to his neck. You saw me this morning, Damien said with a rare smile. You're going to make Miss Reyes think I never leave your side. Alina laughed softly. He's allowed to miss you. That's what kids do. Damien looked at her, his smile fading into something gentler. And what do adults do, Miss Reyes? She met his gaze evenly. They try not to. Later, after unpacking, Alina found Luca sitting cross-legged on his bed, coloring dinosaurs. That's a good one, she said, sitting beside him. It's a T-Rex, he said proudly. Do you like dinosaurs? Who doesn't, she replied. They're strong, brave, and sometimes misunderstood. Papa says I'm like that, Luca said with a grin. Your papa's not wrong. He kept coloring. Do you think Papa's scary? Alina hesitated. I think your papa is strong. Sometimes people get scared when they don't understand someone's strong. Luca nodded seriously as if that made perfect sense. He wasn't always scary, he said quietly. He used to laugh more. Maybe he will again, she said. Luca smiled up at her. You sound like Mama. Her chest tightened. You remember her? A little. She used to sing when I had bad dreams. Alina smiled softly. My mom used to do that too. Can you sing it? I don't remember the words, she said, lying a little. But I remember how it felt. Then sing that, Luca said simply. So she did. A soft, wordless tune, low and steady. By the second verse, Luca's eyes had closed. His small hand rested on hers, his breathing even. When she turned, she saw Damien standing at the doorway again. He didn't speak. His expression was unreadable, a mix of grief and something far deeper. He turned away before she could say anything. Dinner was served in a room large enough to fit her entire apartment inside twice over. The long oak table gleamed under chandelier light, and silver cutlery shone like tiny mirrors. Luca sat between them, his plate of mashed potatoes untouched. Do I have to eat the green stuff? He asked. Damien's stern expression softened slightly. Yes, you do. Miss Reyes says you need your vegetables. Even the peas? Luca groaned. Especially the peas, Alina said, fighting a smile. Damien glanced at her, amusement flickering briefly in his eyes. You're already ganging up on me. I'm just keeping him healthy, she said. Someone has to. Luca grinned. She's bossy, Papa. Good, Damien said. We could use more bossy around here. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. It was the first time Alina had seen Damien without his usual army of guards or advisors nearby. Without the armor of business, he looked human. Tired maybe. Lonely. Do you ever take a break? She asked suddenly. He looked up. From what? From running the world. He almost smiled. The world doesn't stop for breaks. Maybe it should, she said softly. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat the air felt too warm, too charged. He looked away first. After dinner, Luca was sent to bed with a book and Alina returned to her suite. She was brushing her hair when a knock came at the door. She hesitated before opening it. Damien stood there, sleeves rolled, top button undone. The faint scent of rain clung to him. Did I wake you? He asked. No, she said. I was just, she gestured vaguely at the mirror. He nodded. Luca's asleep. I wanted to thank you. For what? For making him laugh again. His voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from somewhere deep. He hasn't laughed like that since his mother died. Alina's heart ached at the way he said mother. He's a wonderful boy. He just needs light. I know. He looked down at his hands, the faint scars along his knuckles catching the lamplight. I've kept him safe. But safety isn't the same as happiness. She didn't know what to say. For the first time she saw not the crime lord or the billionaire or the threat, but a man trapped by his own choices. Do you ever regret it? She asked before she could stop herself. He looked up sharply. Regret what? This life. The danger. The power. His jaw tightened. Every day. But I can't walk away. If I do, they'll come for him. Then let me help, she said. You don't have to do everything alone. He stared at her for a long moment. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand enough, she said softly. He took a step closer, then stopped. Close enough for her to feel the tension in the air, but far enough to keep a fragile line between them. You're different, he said. You look at me like I'm not a monster. Maybe because you're not, she said. You don't know what I've done. I know what you've protected. Something flickered in his eyes, something that looked almost like hope. But before it could take root, he straightened, retreating a step. I shouldn't have come, he said. Good night, Miss Reyes. When he left, Alina closed the door softly and leaned against it, her pulse still racing. She told herself it was just adrenaline, just nerves. But she knew better. Whatever this was, this pull between them, it wasn't safe. The following days fell into a rhythm. Mornings with Luca's therapy, afternoons with his lessons, and evenings of quiet dinners that always ended with long silences and fleeting glances across the table. She learned little things. That Damien always read the newspaper before breakfast. That he took his coffee black. That he kept a photo of his late wife tucked behind a glass cabinet but never looked at it. And she learned that even in silence his presence filled a room completely. One afternoon, as she helped Luca with a puzzle, a thunderstorm rolled in. Lightning flashed, followed by a deep rumble that made the boy flinch. It's just thunder, Alina said, wrapping an arm around him. It can't hurt you. He nodded, but his small hands trembled. Papa doesn't like storms either, he whispered. They remind him of the night Mama. He stopped, biting his lip. Alina hugged him gently. You don't have to talk about it. I miss her, he said simply. I know. When he finally relaxed, she noticed Damien standing silently in the doorway again. He'd heard. His expression was unreadable, grief and guilt interwoven. She stood, giving him space to go to his son, but he didn't move. He talks to you, he said quietly. He needs someone who listens. Maybe I forgot how, Damien murmured. She hesitated. You could learn again. He looked up, eyes dark and searching. And who would teach me? She didn't answer, but the look she gave him said everything. That night, after Luca was asleep, Alina found herself restless. She wandered through the mansion until she reached the balcony overlooking the gardens. Rain still glistened on the stone railings. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't need to turn to know who it was. You shouldn't be out here alone, Damien said. I like the quiet. There's no quiet here, he said. Only pauses between the noise. She smiled faintly. You always talk like that? Like what? Like someone who's seen too much and doesn't know how to stop remembering. He exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sigh. You're not wrong. For a while they just stood there listening to the wind through the trees. Then he said softly, You remind me of her. Your wife. He nodded. Juliana. She was fearless too. I'm not fearless, Alina said. I'm just stubborn. That's even worse, he said, smiling faintly. When she turned to face him, the distance between them felt smaller than ever. The stormlight caught his features, the silver thread in his dark hair, the faint shadow of exhaustion beneath his eyes. He looked human in that moment. Vulnerable even. Thank you, he said suddenly. For bringing life back into this house. You make it sound like I'm some kind of miracle. Maybe you are. Her heart stumbled at his tone. But before either could speak again, a voice called from down the hall. Adrian's, sharp and urgent. Mr. Voss, we have a situation. The air shifted instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by alertness. Damien's expression hardened. Go to Luca, he said. Now. What's happening? Just do it. She didn't argue. She ran down the hall to Luca's room, closing the door behind her. Through the window she saw men moving quickly across the grounds. Dark shapes against the wet grass, flashlights slicing through the night. Something was wrong. Very wrong. But as thunder cracked again and alarms began to echo faintly through the halls, one thought burned in her chest. She wasn't just the nurse anymore. She was part of whatever this was. The shadows, the danger, the fire. And there was no turning back now. The storm had rolled in hard and fast, swallowing the city in sheets of silver rain. The estate's power flickered, lights dimming before the backup generators hummed to life. Outside, thunder cracked like distant gunfire. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Alina had spent the afternoon trying to distract Luca with board games and stories. He'd finally fallen asleep, his little hand still clutching one of hers. She slipped away gently, tucking the blanket around him, and stepped into the hallway. The air smelled faintly of smoke, wood from the fireplace in the west hall. She followed the scent, her footsteps soft against the carpet. Damien was there, sitting alone at the head of a long dining table, a half-finished glass of red wine beside his hand. The stormlight through the windows made shadows dance across his face. "You should be resting," he said without looking up. "So should you," Alina replied, crossing her arms. "It's past midnight." He glanced up then, his eyes dark but calm. "You're persistent." "It's called concern," she said. "You've barely eaten since last night." He gestured to the empty chair beside him. "Then join me. So I don't feel scolded." She hesitated for a moment, then sat. The fire crackled in the corner, throwing warm light between them. For a while neither spoke. The storm outside filled the silence. Finally she said, "Adrian told me the intruders last night were caught." "They were," Damien said. "4 of them. None local." "Who were they?" "Men who made the mistake of crossing into my territory." His tone was flat, almost too calm. Alina frowned. "So this is normal? People breaking in? Guns, guards, cameras everywhere." He looked at her then, and the look in his eyes made her heart skip. "In my world, peace doesn't exist. You buy it. You fight for it. And sometimes you bleed for it. Luca doesn't deserve to grow up like that." "No," he said softly. "He doesn't. That's why I do what I do, so he won't have to." For a long moment they just looked at each other. The rain hit the windows harder now, thunder rolling low and constant. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked. "All the time." "So why not walk away?" He poured another glass of wine but didn't drink it. "If I walk away, everything I've built collapses. Men like me don't get to retire. We get buried." Something in his voice, the calm certainty of it, unsettled her. She leaned forward slightly. "You sound like you've already accepted that." "I accepted it the day my wife died," he said quietly. Her breath caught. What happened to her? For a moment he didn't answer. The firelight flickered, catching the sharp lines of his face. "Juliana was caught in a crossfire meant for me. A message from people who wanted to see me fall. They got their message. And I got my war." His jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck tense. "When I held her that night, I promised her something, that I'd never let our son be taken from me. Whatever it took." Alina swallowed hard. "That's a heavy promise to carry." "Some promises are heavier than death," he said. The thunder outside roared, shaking the windows. For a moment Alina forgot the storm, the danger, the rules. All she saw was a man trapped in grief and iron will, refusing to break. She reached out, resting a hand over his. His skin was warm, his fingers cold. "You're not alone anymore," she said quietly. He looked at her hand, then at her. For once there was no wall between them, only the silence of shared understanding. "You shouldn't say things like that," he said finally, his voice low. "Why not?" "Because I might start believing them." Their eyes locked, and for one dangerous, suspended moment the world outside disappeared. The storm, the danger, the distance, all gone. He leaned forward slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You terrify me, Alina." "Why?" she asked, her voice soft. "Because you make me remember I'm still human." She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, lightning flashed outside, followed by a sudden violent bang. Not thunder this time. A gunshot. Then another. The sound came from the east side of the estate. Damien's expression changed instantly, calm turning to focus, warmth turning to command. He stood, eyes sharp. "Stay here." "Damien." He was already gone. She ran after him anyway. Her instincts overrode reason. As she reached the hallway, alarms blared, low, pulsing tones. The air filled with shouts, boots thudding, radios crackling. She saw guards sprinting toward the east wing, weapons drawn. "Get Miss Reyes to safety," Adrian barked. "No," she yelled. "Where's Luca?" "He's secure," Adrian said. "Go to your room." "I'm not leaving him," she shouted, already moving. Adrian swore under his breath but followed. Together they reached Luca's room where two guards stood watch. The boy sat up, frightened, eyes wide. "Miss Alina," he cried. She rushed to him, kneeling by the bed. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. It's just noise. Outside, more gunfire. Closer now." Adrian pulled a panel near the bookshelf, revealing a hidden door. "Safe room. Go." "Wait, what about Damien?" Alina demanded. Adrian's jaw clenched. "He doesn't hide." "Then I'm not hiding either. Miss Reyes. Either we both go or neither of us does." Adrian hesitated, then handed her a small earpiece. "Stay behind me. Don't speak unless necessary." She nodded, heart racing. They moved quickly through the halls, the sounds of chaos echoing, shouts, doors slamming, the thunder mixing with the gunfire. When they reached the main foyer, she saw Damien, calm amid the storm. He stood behind a pillar, returning fire with unnerving precision. His movements were sharp, economical, lethal. When the last intruder fell, silence returned, broken only by the ringing in Alina's ears and the rain against the windows. She stepped forward slowly, breath shaking. "Damien." He turned. His suit was streaked with blood, not his own, she realized. He dropped the gun onto the table beside him, the metallic clink echoing. "You shouldn't have come out," he said, voice low. "I had to make sure you were alive." He exhaled slowly, closing the distance between them. His eyes softened for just a heartbeat. "You don't belong in this world. Then why did you bring me into it?" "Because," he said, his voice a whisper now, "I couldn't stop myself." He reached for her hand, fingers brushing hers. His touch was steady, grounding. "You belong to me now," he said quietly, not as a threat but as a vow. And in that moment she knew he wasn't talking about possession. He was talking about responsibility, about something dangerous and unbreakable. Something that would change everything. The next morning came too quickly. Rain still fell, soft and steady, washing away the chaos of the night. But the scent of gunpowder lingered faintly in the air. Alina stood at the window, watching the sun struggle through the clouds. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes. The gunfire, the shadows, the look on Damien's face as he fought. The door opened behind her. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. "You didn't sleep," he said. "Neither did you," she replied. He walked to the window beside her. The faint morning light touched the edge of his face, the tiredness in his eyes, the faint bruise along his jaw. "I didn't mean for you to see that," he said. "But I did," she answered. "And I'm not going to pretend I didn't." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The people who attacked last night were sent by the Bratva. They want leverage. Luca is leverage. And you think they'll stop?" "No," he said quietly. "That's why I have to end it." She turned to face him. "End it how?" "With more blood. With whatever it takes." Alina took a breath, trying to steady the trembling in her chest. "You can't keep living like this, Damien. You'll lose yourself." "I already have," he said simply. The honesty in his voice broke something inside her. "No, you haven't. You still care. You still fight for the right reasons." He looked at her for a long time, really looked. Then softly, "You don't know how dangerous it is to believe in me." "I'll risk it," she said. Before he could reply, Luca's voice came from the doorway. "Papa." Damien turned instantly, his whole posture changing. "It's okay, son," he said gently. "Everything's fine." Luca nodded, sleepy-eyed, and padded into the room. He climbed into Alina's lap without asking, resting his head on her shoulder. "Bad dreams?" she asked softly. He nodded. There were loud noises. "It's over," Damien said, kneeling beside him. "No one's going to hurt you." The boy looked at his father. "You promise?" "I promise," Damien said, voice steady. After Luca left, Alina looked at him. "He believes every word you say." "He has to," Damien murmured. If he ever stops, he won't feel safe. By afternoon, the estate was being repaired. Windows replaced, walls repainted, evidence of violence erased as if it never happened. But Alina knew better. The ghosts of that night wouldn't vanish so easily. She found Damien in his office, studying a map spread across his desk. Red marks covered parts of the city, territories, routes, safe houses. He didn't look up as she entered. "You should take Luca to the country house for a few weeks," he said. "It's safer there." "What about you?" "I'll join you when it's over." "Over?" she echoed. "You mean when you start another war?" His eyes lifted to hers, hard, unreadable. "They tried to take my son. That's not a declaration I can ignore." "And what about me?" she asked quietly. "What happens if they come after me?" He stood, crossing the room until he was in front of her. "Then they die first." She looked up at him, heart racing. "You talk like death is just another language you speak." "It is," he said. "But I'm tired of it." "Then stop." "I can't," he said. "Not yet." Something in his tone made her chest tighten. Exhaustion, despair, and determination all at once. "Promise me one thing," she said softly. "That you'll come back." He met her gaze. "I can't promise something I might not be able to keep." "Then promise you'll try." That, at least, he could do. He nodded once. "I'll try." That night she packed a small bag for Luca. Clothes, medicine, his favorite book. Adrian would drive them to the country house at dawn. As she zipped the bag, she looked around the room. The tall windows, the polished floors, the faint echo of Luca's laughter still clinging to the air. It already felt like goodbye. When she stepped into the hall, Damien was waiting near the stairs. His expression was unreadable. "You'll leave in the morning," he said quietly. "And you?" "Tonight." They stood there for a long moment, the silence louder than words. Finally she said, "Be careful." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "Careful doesn't survive in my world." She took a step closer, her voice low. "Then survive for me." He didn't reply. Instead he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch lingered just long enough to make her heart ache. "Take care of my son," he said. "I will," she whispered. Then he turned, walked down the hall and disappeared into the dark, leaving her standing there, trembling, the sound of the rain filling the emptiness he left behind. The next morning, when Alina and Luca drove away from the estate, she looked back through the window. The mansion stood tall and still under the gray sky, beautiful and cold, a fortress waiting for its king to return. She didn't know if she'd ever see Damien Voss again. But deep down she knew this wasn't the end. It was just the calm before the next storm. The drive to the country house took 4 hours through winding roads and fog-covered hills. Alina sat in the back seat with Luca, the boy leaning against her arm, half asleep. Every time the car hit a bump, he stirred, whispering, "Is Papa coming soon?" "Soon," she said softly, though she had no idea when, or if, Damien would join them. Adrian drove, his eyes steady on the road. His face never gave away much, but the faint lines around his mouth looked deeper now. He'd seen things he wouldn't talk about. When the gates finally appeared, Alina's breath caught. The country house was different from the city estate. Smaller, quieter, wrapped in forest. The stone walls were covered in ivy, the windows glowing faintly with evening light. It looked almost peaceful. Almost. "Stay inside after dark," Adrian said as they unloaded. "The area's secure but not invincible." "You make it sound like we're being hunted," Alina said. "We are," he replied simply. He handed her a phone. "It connects to Damien only. One number. No others." Then he left, disappearing into the trees with the silent efficiency of a soldier. The first days passed in uneasy calm. Alina spent her mornings helping Luca with his therapy, afternoons cooking simple meals, and evenings reading to him by the fire. The quiet should have been comforting, but every night she found herself listening, for engines, footsteps, a phone call that never came. Luca at least seemed happy. He laughed more here, played outside under the tall trees, collected pebbles like treasures. Watching him, Alina tried to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could pretend this was normal. But it never lasted. On the third night she found the red mark on the window. Small, circular. Like a laser sight had touched the glass. Her heart froze. She pulled Luca close, her hands shaking as she shut the curtains. Then she grabbed the phone and hit the only number saved. It rang once. Alina, Damien's voice came calm and clear. What happened? Someone's been here, she said. A mark on the window like a sniper sight. I don't know if it's old or... Lock the doors. Stay with Luca. I already did. Good. I'm sending men. Damien, what about you? Are you... I'm fine, he said, though his voice carried an edge of strain. You're the target now, not me. Her stomach twisted. Why? Because they think hurting you will hurt me. Then they're right, she whispered. Silence stretched across the line. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, raw. Don't say that. I can't think about you being in danger. Not now. Then end this war. I will, he said. Whatever it takes. The line went dead. The men arrived within the hour, silent, professional, armed. They swept the grounds, found no intruder, no trace of movement. Just that one small burn mark on the window. Still, Alina didn't sleep that night. She sat by Luca's bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest, the shadows of firelight on his face. They think hurting you will hurt me. She could still hear Damien's voice, heavy with something she didn't dare name. When morning came, the forest outside was wrapped in mist. She stepped out onto the porch, breathing the damp air. The phone buzzed in her hand. A message from Damien. It's almost over. Be ready to leave soon. She stared at the words for a long time. Almost over. But what would be left of him when it was? That evening she sat with Luca by the fireplace. Tell me about Papa, he said suddenly. Before Mama died. She hesitated. Why don't you tell me what you remember first? He used to laugh, Luca said, and sing to me in Italian. He stopped after that night. Maybe he just forgot how, Alina said gently. Can you remind him? She smiled sadly. I'll try. But as she said it, she wasn't sure she could. 2 nights later, the phone rang again. He snatched it up. Damien. His breathing came through first, ragged, strained. Alina. Her pulse spiked. What happened? Ambush, he said, voice hoarse. Warehouse downtown. I'm fine, but... The line crackled. Then silence. Damien, she shouted. Damien. No response. She stood frozen, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she was moving, grabbing a jacket, her medical bag, keys. Adrian stepped into the hall. Where do you think you're going? To him. It's not safe. I don't care, she snapped. He saved my life. I'm not sitting here while he bleeds somewhere alone. Adrian studied her for a moment, then nodded once. I'll drive. They found him 2 hours later, deep in the city's industrial district. The warehouse was half collapsed, riddled with bullet holes, the air thick with smoke. Damien sat against a wall, blood seeping through his shirt, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. His gun lay beside him, empty. He looked up as Alina ran toward him. You shouldn't be here, he rasped. Neither should you, she said, kneeling beside him. You've lost a lot of blood. I've had worse. Don't talk, she said firmly, tearing open her medical kit. Just stay awake. He tried to joke. Bossy as ever. Quiet, she ordered, pressing gauze to the wound. His breath hissed through his teeth, but he didn't move. Luca, he asked. He's safe. Good. She worked quickly, hands steady despite the chaos. You're lucky, she muttered. The bullet missed the artery. Luck had nothing to do with it. You always show up when I need you. Stop trying to charm your way out of dying, she said, voice shaking. It's not working. He chuckled weakly, then winced. If you're here, I'm not dying. When she finished stitching the wound, she sat back, trembling from exhaustion. He looked at her, eyes softer now, clearer. You shouldn't have come. I told you I don't listen well. He smiled faintly. You saved me again. She reached up, brushing a smear of blood from his cheek. You keep making me. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them breathed. Then his hand found hers, fingers lacing together. You belong to me now, he said quietly, the same words he'd said before, but this time there was no command in them. Only gratitude. She squeezed his hand. Then you belong to me too. They stayed there until the sirens grew near. Adrian's men arrived to extract them, moving quickly and quietly. As they lifted Damien onto a stretcher, he caught her wrist. Don't leave, he said. I'm not going anywhere. The mountain-safe house was hidden high above the valley, surrounded by pine trees and mist. The air smelled of rain and cedar, the silence broken only by wind through the branches. Alina spent the first night watching over Damien as he slept. His face was pale against the pillow, but his breathing was strong. She cleaned the wound again, changed the bandage, and finally sat beside him, exhaustion pressing heavy on her shoulders. When he woke the next morning, the first thing he said was, "You didn't have to stay." "I did," she said. "You'd have gotten an infection otherwise." "That's not what I meant." "I know," she said softly. He studied her, then sighed. "You keep saving me, Alina. It's becoming a habit." She smiled faintly. "Then stop getting shot." Easier said than done. For a while they just sat there, sunlight cutting through the blinds, dust motes swirling in the air. It felt almost peaceful, like the world outside had paused. "How's Luca?" he asked finally. "Safe. Adrian took him to the lower villa. He's been asking for you." "I'll see him soon," Damien said, though the effort of sitting up clearly hurt him. Alina placed a hand on his shoulder. "Rest. You don't have to prove anything right now." He looked at her hand, then at her face. "You talk to me like I'm human." "Because you are." He shook his head. "Not anymore." "Yes, you are," she said, her voice firmer now. "You bleed. You worry. You love your son. That's what makes you human, Damien." The word love hung between them like fragile glass. He didn't correct her. Over the next few days he grew stronger. They fell into an unexpected rhythm. Shared meals, quiet mornings, long silences that said more than words ever could. Sometimes he'd tell her stories about Luca's childhood, about his wife, about the empire he'd built from nothing. And sometimes when the pain medicine dulled his sharpness, he'd let her see the man beneath it all. The one who still dreamed of peace even if he didn't believe in it. One night, as rain whispered against the roof, she found him on the porch, staring into the dark valley below. "You should be inside," she said, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "I can't sleep," he said. "Every time I close my eyes I see her." "Your wife." He nodded slowly. "She used to say I was made of stone. That nothing could break me. But she did." "She must have loved you a lot," Alina said. "She did," he said quietly. "And I failed her." Alina stood beside him, the air cold against her skin. "You can't keep punishing yourself forever." "I'm not," he said. "I'm protecting what's left of her. Our son. You." Her heart caught. "Me." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "You're part of this now, whether you meant to be or not. I can't let anything happen to you." "Then stop living like a man waiting to die," she said. "Start living like someone who wants to live." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is." The wind blew harder, carrying the scent of pine and rain. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the steady beat of their breathing. Then he reached out, brushing his fingers against hers. "You've changed everything, Alina," he said. She turned to face him. "So have you." And for the first time she saw a flicker of something new in his eyes. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. The next morning they packed for the journey back. The war in the city was ending. Damien's men had reclaimed what was his. The danger for now was passing. As she helped him into the car, he caught her hand again. "When we get home," he said quietly, "things will be different." "How different?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I want to find out." She smiled, a tired, honest smile. "So do I." The car started down the mountain road, mist swirling around them. For the first time in months, Alina let herself breathe. Whatever waited ahead, peace or more chaos, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't afraid anymore. Because somewhere between the blood and the fire, they had both found something worth surviving for. The ride back to the city was long, quiet, and heavy with unspoken things. Luca slept across the back seat, his small head resting on Alina's lap. Damien sat in the front, silent, watching the road with eyes that missed nothing. By the time they reached the Voss estate, night had already claimed the sky. The mansion stood exactly as they'd left it, grand, silent, and shadowed. But the energy was different now. The guards moved with urgency. The gates had doubled their patrols. War might have paused, but it wasn't over. Damien helped Luca inside, his movements careful but firm. The boy smiled sleepily. Are we home, Papa? Yes, Damien said softly. You're safe now. Alina followed, clutching her medical bag. The familiar hallways felt colder. The silence here wasn't peace, it was waiting. When Luca was tucked into bed, Damien lingered by the doorway watching his son sleep. He doesn't know what I've done, he said quietly. He doesn't need to, Alina replied. He just needs you to be here. Damien's jaw tightened. Being here doesn't erase blood. No, she said gently. But love does something blood can't, it heals. He looked at her then, the corner of his mouth twitching in something that wasn't quite a smile. You believe that? I have to, she said. Otherwise none of this makes sense. He exhaled slowly, eyes lingering on her face. You're too good for this place. Maybe, she said softly, but this place needs me. Their eyes met for a long moment, steady, quiet, unflinching. Then without another word he turned and walked away. The storm that night was relentless. Rain hammered against the windows. Wind howled through the halls. Alina lay awake, listening to it, her heart restless. Somewhere downstairs she heard a door slam. Then footsteps. Instinct made her rise. She threw on a robe and slipped into the corridor, her bare feet soundless on the marble floor. She found him in the study. The fire was burning low, his shirt undone, a glass of whiskey untouched beside his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. You should be asleep, he said, his voice rough. So should you, she replied. He laughed softly. Seems neither of yous follows orders well. She stepped closer. You're in pain again. It's nothing. It's not nothing, she said, walking behind him, her hands brushing the edge of the bandage under his shirt. You tore your stitches. He flinched slightly but didn't move away. You notice everything. That's my job. His voice dropped low. No, Alina. Your job is to keep my son alive. What you're doing now, this, is something else. Her hands froze. Then tell me to stop. He didn't. Instead he turned slowly, his eyes dark in the firelight. I don't want to. For a long moment neither spoke. The air between them felt electric, charged with every unspoken word that had built since the night she first saved his son. You should rest, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. So should you, he murmured back. When she looked up, his gaze locked on hers. The world outside vanished. The rain, the danger, the shadows. All that existed was this room, the sound of their breathing, and the pull neither could ignore anymore. Damien, she said quietly, this isn't a good idea. No, he agreed. It's the worst idea I've ever had. And yet he stepped closer until his forehead rested gently against hers. You make me forget everything, he said. The blood. The enemies. The weight. All of it. You can't live on forgetting, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Then I'll live on you. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words never came. The storm outside cracked like a drum and his hand found hers, steady and sure. You're mine, he said softly. Not because I own you. Because I finally found something worth keeping. Her breath caught. And you. He met her gaze. Yours, he said simply. Always. Outside, thunder rolled again, drowning the rest of the world. Inside, two broken souls stood in the quiet firelight, both realizing the same thing. Neither of them could ever go back. The next morning the storm had passed, but its echoes remained. The air felt different now, heavier with meaning, lighter with honesty. Damien was already gone when Alina woke. On the table lay a note in his sharp handwriting. Meet me in the garden at noon. D. When she found him there, the sun had broken through the clouds, scattering light across the wet stone. He was standing by the fountain, dressed in black as always, looking strangely out of place among the flowers. You came, he said. You asked, she replied. He looked down for a moment. Last night shouldn't have happened. She felt a twist in her chest. Because you regret it? Because I don't, he said. That left her speechless. He turned toward her fully. This life, it destroys everything it touches. You don't deserve to be pulled into it. I'm already in it, she said simply. And I'm not leaving. He shook his head slightly, a shadow of a smile ghosting his lips. You really don't listen, do you? Never have. He took a step closer. Then at least promise me one thing. What? When this ends, When it all falls apart, promise me you'll take Luca and run. I can't make that promise, she said. Not if it means leaving you behind. He sighed. You'll have to. She looked up at him. You saved me once, Damien. Maybe it's time I save you. He said nothing, just stared at her with that same impossible mix of admiration and fear. Then very quietly, you already are. That night the nightmares returned. Alina woke to the sound of shouting. She ran to the hallway and found Damien standing near the staircase, drenched in sweat, his fists clenched. His eyes were open but distant, lost somewhere else. Damien, she called. He didn't respond. His breathing came fast, shallow, panicked. Damien, it's me, she said, stepping closer. It's Alina. He blinked as if her voice pulled him back from the edge. Alina, he rasped. She reached for his hand. It's okay. You're safe. It's just a dream. He sank onto the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. It's never just a dream. She knelt in front of him. Tell me. He hesitated, jaw tight. Then quietly, I see her. Every time I close my eyes. Your wife. He nodded slowly. The night she died she called me. I didn't answer. I was too busy planning revenge against a man who didn't even deserve my anger. If I'd picked up the phone, maybe she'd still be alive. Damien. He shook his head sharply. Don't tell me it wasn't my fault. It was. The raw pain in his voice made her chest ache. She touched his arm gently. Carrying it forever won't bring her back. I know, he said. But if I let it go, then she's really gone. No, Alina whispered. She's in Luca. She's in you. And maybe a little in me. That made him look up. His eyes, red and tired, searched hers. You keep saying things that make me want to believe in something again. Then believe, she said. He gave a weak laugh. You make it sound easy. It's not, she said. But it's possible. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as he touched her cheek. You shouldn't have come into my life, Alina. I didn't plan to. And now I don't know how to let you go. Then don't, she said simply. For a long moment neither spoke. The house was silent except for the distant hum of the rain gutters and the soft sound of their breathing. Finally he stood. I have to meet with Marco in the morning, he said. Something's wrong in the North Docks. They're moving shipments that aren't mine. You're still recovering. I can't afford to stop, he interrupted. If I show weakness, everything falls apart. Then take me with you, she said suddenly. He blinked. What? You need medical clearance anyway, she said quickly. And I'm not sitting here wondering if you're dead again. He studied her for a long time. Then reluctantly, fine. But you follow my lead. Deal, she said. The docks smelled of salt and metal and rain. Crates were stacked high under flickering floodlights. Men moved quickly, quiet but alert. Alina stayed close to Damien, her heart hammering with every shadow. Marco was waiting near the water's edge. He was tall, sharp-featured, his expression unreadable. Boss, he said. We found something. He led them to a warehouse. Inside, rows of boxes stretched into the dark. Damien pried one open and froze. Inside was a small arsenal. Rifles, explosives, crates of ammunition. All marked with the Valentesi insignia, Damien's own crest. They're framing you, Alina whispered. Marco nodded grimly. Word is already spreading. The Bratva is telling everyone you supplied them. Damien's eyes went cold. Then someone inside my organization is feeding them information. Who? Lena asked. He looked up at Marco, expression sharp. Find out. But something in Marco's gaze, too steady, too controlled, made her uneasy. When they left the warehouse, she glanced at Damien. Do you trust him? I used to, he said quietly. How I don't know. Back at the estate, Alina walked into her room and found a folded note on her pillow. No name. No mark. Just 2 words written in block letters. He knows. Her heart stopped. She ran to Damien's office. Damien, she said breathlessly, holding out the note. This was in my room. He read it, eyes narrowing. Who put it there? I don't know. He crumpled it in his hand. Adrian will sweep the house. No one comes or goes without my permission. Damien, what if it means Marco? Then I'll deal with him, he said flatly. There was no fear in his voice now, only steal. Promise me you'll be careful, she said. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Careful doesn't win wars. I'm not asking for careful, she said. I'm asking for alive. That made him pause. Then quietly, for you I'll try. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, a brief, tender touch that said everything words couldn't. When he pulled back he whispered, no matter what happens next, remember this. If I lose everything, you and Luca are the only things I'll fight to keep. And as he walked out of the room into the darkness, Alina had the sinking feeling that the war he was about to fight wasn't just against his enemies. It was against the ghosts inside him. The next morning broke gray and cold, the kind of dawn that made the world feel heavy before it even began. The estate was silent except for the low hum of the security system and the faint chirp of birds somewhere beyond the walls. Alina stood at the window watching rain streak the glass. She hadn't slept much. Her mind kept circling back to the note, he knows. Every time she closed her eyes she saw it again, felt that cold knot of fear in her stomach tighten. Downstairs voices murmured. The kind of murmurs that meant something bad was brewing. She followed the sound to the study. Damien's voice was low, sharp, controlled. I want names, Adrian. Someone fed them the locations of my safe houses. Adrian stood stiff, jaw clenched. We've gone through everyone. Only a handful knew those coordinates. And Marco's one of them, Damien said. Adrian didn't answer right away. He's been with you for 15 years. I know exactly how long, Damien said quietly. That's what makes it worse. The air between them went cold. Then Adrian nodded once. You want me to bring him in? No, Damien said. I'll do it myself. Alina stepped forward. Damien. He turned, eyes finding her instantly. You shouldn't be here. I heard. You heard enough, he said. Go upstairs. I'm not a child, she said sharply. If Marco really betrayed you, you can't go after him alone. I can and I will, he said, voice low. If I'm wrong, I'll know. If I'm right, his gaze hardened. Then he won't leave the room alive. Damien. He moved past her without another word, his expression unreadable. The guards fell in behind him as he strode down the hall. An hour later, Alina found herself pacing the grand living room, heart pounding. The silence in the house felt wrong. Luca was in his playroom, oblivious, building a castle out of wooden blocks. She didn't hear the first gunshot. Only the second. It echoed through the halls like thunder. Luca, stay here, she shouted, running toward the sound. Her footsteps pounded against marble as she turned the corner. 2 guards were down, alive but bleeding, and beyond them the study door hung open. Inside, Damien stood over Marco. Blood stained the carpet. Marco's pistol lay on the floor, his hand reaching for it weakly. You tried to sell me out, Damien said, his voice steady and low like ice cracking. You fed them my routes, my men, my son's location. Marco coughed, a dark smear on his lips. I did what I had to do. You did what you were paid to do, Damien said. There's a difference. Marco laughed weakly. You think you're any better? You built an empire on blood. I never sold family, Damien said. He raised his gun. That's the difference. Alina burst in. Stop. Damien didn't turn. Get out, Alina. You don't have to do this, she said, stepping closer. It's over. Let the police. He looked at her sharply. Police don't exist in my world. Then make them, she said, her voice trembling. You said you wanted to change things. This is where it starts. For a second his hand trembled. Just for a second. Then Marco moved, too fast, too desperate, grabbing the fallen gun. Damien. Alina screamed. Damien fired first. The shot echoed once, then silence. Marco crumpled to the floor, the gun falling from his hand. Damien stood still for a long time, staring down at the man who had once been his brother in everything but blood. Then he lowered the weapon slowly and handed it to Adrian. Clean it up, he said quietly. Alina's heart raced. Damien. He turned toward her, his face pale, his voice steady. He was going to shoot me. I know, she said softly. But that doesn't make it easier. He looked at her for a long moment, something in his eyes breaking, though his expression didn't change. It never does. He brushed past her, his hand brushing hers briefly. A silent apology, a silent warning, and left the room. That night, Alina sat alone in her suite, staring at the fire. The events of the day replayed in her mind. The gunshot, the look in Damien's eyes, the echo of finality in Marco's last breath. When he knocked on her door, she didn't answer right away. "Alina," he said softly through the door. "Please." She opened it. He stood there looking more human than she'd ever seen him. No jacket, sleeves rolled, eyes tired but open. "You hate me now," he said. "No," she said quietly. "I just don't want to watch you drown in this." "I'm already underwater," he said. "You're just the only air left." Her throat tightened. "Then breathe." He stepped closer, his voice low, raw. "I've lost everything that mattered before. I can't lose you too. Then stop living like you expect to." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "You keep asking me to be something I don't know how to be." "I'm not asking for perfection," she said. "Just honesty." "I'm trying," he whispered. For a long moment they stood there, just two people surrounded by ghosts trying to find something living in the ruins. When he finally left, he didn't close the door behind him. The gesture was small, but it felt like trust. 3 days later, the storm broke for real. Not rain this time, but gunfire. It started with a call at dawn. Adrian burst into the room, breathless. They hit the south docks. 3 dead. They're moving toward the west line now. Damien was already on his feet. "Mobilize everyone. No one waits." "What about the kid?" Adrian asked. "Get him out. Take him to the secondary safe house. Alina goes with him." Alina shook her head. "No. I'm not leaving you. This isn't up for debate." "You can't fight this alone," she said. "You'll get yourself killed." He turned to her, eyes hard. "If I die, you get Luca and you run." "That's an order." "Then you'd better not die," she said, her voice steady. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear maybe, or something deeper. Then he nodded once. "I won't." The estate transformed into a fortress in minutes. Guards poured through the halls, radios crackling. The smell of oil and gunmetal filled the air. Alina packed medical supplies, her hands shaking but her mind focused. When Luca woke, she tried to smile. "We're going on another trip, okay? With Adrian." The boy frowned. "Where's Papa?" "Working," she said softly. "He'll meet us soon." Luca nodded but didn't look convinced. "He always says that." Her heart clenched. This time he means it. Adrian appeared at the door. "We have to go. Now." Alina glanced at Damien. He stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, giving orders in a low, calm tone. When he hung up, he looked at her and said only one word, "Go." She hesitated, then stepped forward, took his face in her hands and whispered, "Come back to me." He didn't answer with words. Just a brief touch of his forehead to hers before turning away. The car ride out of the city was tense. Adrian drove like a man who'd done this too many times. Alina kept Luca close, her eyes scanning every shadow. Every few minutes her phone buzzed. Updates from Damien. Dock secured. Warehouse cleared. Heading north. Then silence. She waited. 10 minutes. 20. An hour. Nothing. "Adrian," she said quietly. He should have checked in. Adrian didn't answer. His jaw was set. His eyes flicked to the mirror, then to the road. "We'll hear from him soon." But the tone of his voice said otherwise. Back in the city, the war had erupted. The Bratva had struck hard and fast, hitting supply routes and safe houses. But Damien Voss was a man who'd built his empire on counterattack. From the rooftops to the alleys, the city burned. He moved through it like a shadow, methodical, relentless. Every order he gave tightened the circle around his enemies. By nightfall, the tables had turned. The Bratva's leader, a man named Sergei, was trapped in an abandoned hotel near the river. Damien went in alone. "You shouldn't have touched my family," he said as he stepped through the broken doorway. Sergei laughed weakly. "Family? You mean the nurse? The one who thinks she can fix you?" Damien didn't answer. He just raised his gun. Sergei's smile faltered. "You're too late," he said. "Others are already coming for her." The shot rang out, cutting him off mid-sentence. Far from the city, Alina jolted awake in the safe house, her heart pounding. She didn't know why. The night was still, but something in her gut screamed wrong. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Hello. A deep voice with an accent she didn't recognize said, We have him. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? If you want him back, the voice said, come alone. Tomorrow. Noon. The old church on Gray Street. The line went dead. Adrian found her standing by the window, pale, the phone still in her hand. What happened? They have Damien, she said. They want me to come. That's a trap. I know. Then you're not going, he said firmly. She turned to him, eyes steady. Yes, I am. Alina. He would come for me, she said. You know he would. Adrian stared at her, then sighed. You're going to get yourself killed. Then I'll die trying, she said quietly. At dawn she packed what little she could. A first aid kit, a small pistol she barely knew how to use, and the silver necklace Luca had given her. She knelt beside the boy's bed, brushing hair from his forehead. I'll be back soon, she whispered. Promise. He stirred but didn't wake. Adrian caught her at the door. If you're going, I'm going. He hesitated, then nodded. Then let's end this. By noon, the city was a maze of smoke and ruin. The old church loomed at the end of Gray Street, its windows shattered, its bell long silent. Alina stepped inside, heart racing, gun shaking slightly in her hand. Damien, she called. No answer. Then, movement. A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, familiar. Damien. She ran to him, but stopped when she saw the blood on his shoulder, the bruises along his jaw. You shouldn't have come, he said weakly. Neither should you, she said, tears stinging her eyes. We keep saving each other, remember? He smiled faintly. Seems like it. Before they could say more, another voice cut through the silence. How touching. A man stepped forward, one of Sergei's lieutenants holding a gun. He killed my brother, the man said. Now I'll kill his heart. He aimed at Alina. Damien moved first. The gun went off, and the sound echoed through the broken church like thunder. The gunshot shattered the silence. For a heartbeat, time froze, the world suspended between light and sound. Alina stumbled backward, breath caught in her throat, before she realized Damien was still standing. The man with the gun, Sergei's lieutenant, lay sprawled across the church floor, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. Adrian stood behind him, smoke curling from the barrel of his weapon. You took too long, Adrian said grimly, lowering his gun. Damien swayed slightly, blood running down his arm. I had it handled. You always say that, Adrian replied, glancing at Alina. Get him out of here. Alina's legs finally moved. She ran to Damien, her hands trembling as she pressed against his wound. You're hurt. I'm fine, he said, voice tight with pain. You shouldn't have come. Stop saying that, she snapped. I'm here because I choose to be. He tried to smile, but it faltered. Stubborn woman. Lucky for you, she said, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. Now move before more of them show up. Adrian led the way through the shattered side door of the church, gun raised. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of rain and gunpowder. 2 cars waited in the alley, engines running. They got Damien into the back seat. Alina climbed in beside him, pressing a cloth to his wound as the car sped off. The city blurred by, wet streets, flashing sirens, the distant echo of war still lingering in the air. Hold on, she whispered. You're not leaving me like this. Damien's hand found hers, grip weak but certain. I told you once, he said, eyes closing. I don't forget debts. This isn't a debt, she said fiercely. It's a promise. They reached the safe house just before dawn. A narrow building tucked into the edge of the old district, the kind of place no one noticed. Alina cleaned the wound in silence while Adrian stood guard by the window. The city beyond was still burning in places, smoke curling against the pale sky. When she was done, she sat beside the bed. Damien's breathing had steadied, but he looked pale, drained. You need rest, she said softly. So do you, he murmured. I'll rest when you do. He smiled faintly. You'd make a terrible soldier. I'm a nurse, she said. I fix what soldiers break. He opened his eyes then, studying her. You've done more than that. What do you mean? You've made me remember why I fought in the first place. Her throat tightened. For Luca. For him, Damien said, and now, for you. She couldn't answer. The weight of it sat heavy and sweet in her chest. She wanted to tell him that she felt it too, that somewhere between the danger and the blood, something real had rooted itself. But before she could speak, his eyes closed, exhaustion finally pulling him under. The hours blurred. Alina sat by his bedside, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. The sun rose then fell again. Adrian came and went, bringing news of the city, pieces of the empire shifting, allies declaring loyalty, enemies fleeing. Finally, when Damien woke again, the tension in his face was gone. He looked at her clear-eyed and calm. "How long?" he asked. 18 hours, she said. "You've been out cold." He frowned. "Too long. You needed it." He pushed himself up slowly. "What happened to the others?" "Sergei's network collapsed," Adrian said from the doorway. "Word is spreading, the Bratva's gone quiet." "You won." Damien's jaw tightened. "No one wins in this world, Adrian. Some of us just stop losing for a while." Adrian nodded. "Then take this chance to stop." When he left, Damien turned to Alina. "We're going home." "Home," she repeated. "You mean the estate?" He nodded once. "It's time." The drive back to the estate was silent. The damage from the war still showed. Burned warehouses, empty streets, a city learning to breathe again. When they arrived, the mansion stood like a survivor, scarred but unbroken. Luca was waiting on the steps. When he saw his father, he ran forward, eyes wide with tears. "Papa." Damien knelt, catching him in his arms. "I'm here, son. I told you I'd come back." "You always do," Luca said, burying his face in his father's shoulder. Alina watched them, her heart tightening. For the first time since she'd met him, Damien looked at peace. Maybe not free, but something close to it. When Luca ran inside to show Adrian a new drawing, Damien turned to her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For keeping him safe. For keeping me alive." "You don't have to thank me," she said. "Just stay alive." "I intend to," he said. "But not like before." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. "Everything about my operations. Accounts, connections, evidence, all of it. I'm ending it." Alina stared at him. "You're serious?" He nodded. "It's time to let the ghosts rest." That night, after Luca had fallen asleep, Damien stood outside on the balcony, the city lights flickering in the distance. Alina joined him, the wind cool against her skin. "You're really doing it," she said. Walking away. "I've built empires," he said softly. "Now I want to build something that doesn't burn." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like peace." "It sounds like you," he said. Her heart stumbled. "Damien." He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes silenced her. "If I had died today, the only regret I'd have is not telling you sooner." She swallowed hard. "Telling me what?" "That I love you," he said simply. "And that it terrifies me." She exhaled shakily. "You're not supposed to say things like that." "I don't care," he said. "You've been my light through every dark thing I've done. You deserve the truth." Her eyes filled with tears she didn't fight. "Then here's mine," she said. "I love you too." He smiled, not the sharp smile of the Mafia king, but something softer, something human. He reached for her hand and drew her close, pressing his forehead against hers. "For once," he whispered, "I want to believe we can have something good." "You can," she said. "We can." And in that fragile, perfect moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city and the soft rush of wind, Damien Voss finally allowed himself to hope. Morning came with sunlight instead of sirens. The house, once filled with echoes of violence, felt alive again. Laughter from the kitchen, the smell of fresh bread, the sound of Luca's feet running down the hall. For the first time, Alina allowed herself to think it was over. But peace never lasted long in Damien's world. It started with the sound of a car screeching to a stop outside. Adrian burst through the front door, his face pale. "We have a problem," he said. Damien's calm cracked instantly. "What happened?" "An ambush at the docks. Someone's trying to take what's left of your shipments. It's not Bratva. Looks like one of your old allies trying to rise." "Who?" "Vincent Orloff." Damien's jaw tightened. "Then this ends today." Alina grabbed his arm. "You can't keep doing this. You said it was over." "It will be," he said, grabbing his gun. "Once I make sure no one ever touches this family again." Damien, please, she said, her voice trembling. Don't make me patch you up again. He turned, his expression softening. You won't have to. I promise. But promises in his world were fragile things. By the time the first reports came in, Alina was pacing the living room, her hands shaking. She tried calling him, no answer. Minutes stretched into hours. Then Adrian's voice came through the radio on the counter. He's been hit, he said, voice breaking through static. We're bringing him home. Her knees nearly gave out. Where? The south entrance. 2 minutes. She ran. When the car pulled in, she was already there, her hands trembling but steadying the moment she saw him. Damien was pale, blood soaking through his shirt again, his breaths shallow. Get him inside, she ordered. They carried him to the living room couch. Alina tore open her medical bag, adrenaline pushing fear aside. Stay with me, she whispered, pressing gauze to the wound. You promised. He opened his eyes weakly. I keep my promises. Then prove it, she said. Don't you dare leave me now. He tried to smile but couldn't. His hand searched for hers, finding it even as his strength faded. You remember what I said, he whispered. About building something that doesn't burn? Don't talk, she said. Just breathe. I meant it, he said. I want a life with you. With him. Away from all of this. You'll have it, she said fiercely. I won't let you go. He winced as she pressed harder against the wound. You're crying, he said. So are you, she whispered. He laughed weakly. Guess we're both human after all. When she finally stopped the bleeding, his pulse steadied. The worst had passed. She sat back, tears streaking her cheeks, hands shaking. Adrian stood in the doorway, relief in his eyes. He's alive. For now, she said softly. But no more wars. Not ever. Damien's eyes opened again, faint but sure. No more, he said. It's over. Days later, the city began to heal. The fires burned out, the noise faded, and the name Voss became more rumor than threat. One morning, Alina found Damien sitting outside with Luca, the boy on his lap, laughing as they watched the sunrise. It was such a simple scene, ordinary, peaceful, that she had to stop and take it in. When he saw her, he smiled. You look like someone seeing the sun for the first time. Maybe I am, she said, sitting beside him. Luca grinned. Papa says we're going to the beach soon. Do we even have a beach plan? Lena asked. Not yet, Damien said, smiling faintly. But we will. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You kept your promise. I told you I would. He looked out at the horizon, the sunlight catching the scar on his cheek, a mark of everything they'd survived. You saved me, he said quietly. Not from bullets, not from enemies, from myself. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. You did the same for me. The wind stirred the trees, carrying the scent of spring. For once, the world didn't feel like it was about to fall apart. It felt like a beginning. Months passed. The Voss estate, once echoing with fear and gunfire, now lived in quiet rhythm. The walls that had seen blood and betrayal now heard laughter and piano music. Soft, hesitant melodies Alina played in the evenings when Luca insisted on dancing in his socks. Damien watched them from the balcony most nights, his hands tucked in his pockets, his expression softer than anyone in the city would ever believe possible. Peace, he had learned, wasn't silence. It was fragile noise, the sound of a child's laughter, the hum of morning light, the steady heartbeat of the woman he thought he'd never deserve. Still, he didn't sleep well. Some nights he woke in a cold sweat, hearing echoes of his past. The screams, the gunfire, the smell of smoke that never quite left him. Alina would find him standing by the window, staring into the dark. Another dream, she would ask. He'd nod. It's always the same. Then she would take his hand and whisper, You're here. You're home. It's over. And for a while he would believe her. One morning Luca came running into the kitchen, breathless. Papa. Someone's at the gate. Alina turned from the counter, wiping her hands on a towel. Who is it? I don't know, Luca said, eyes wide. They said they're friends. Damien was already moving. Adrian. Within seconds, Adrian appeared, his expression sharp. Guards have them under watch. One man, one woman. No weapons visible. Damien nodded once. Bring them in. Alina watched him tense as the strangers entered the hall. They were older, early 50s, dressed plainly, not like threats. The woman's eyes, though, carried something sharp and knowing. "Mr. Voss," she said softly. "Or do you prefer Damien now?" His jaw tightened. "Depends who's asking." "My name is Clara. This is my husband, Matteo." Alina studied them. There was something familiar in the way Clara stood, proud, unflinching. "We're here because of her," Clara said, turning her gaze to Alina. "You're the nurse who saved his son." Alina blinked. Yes. That was a long time ago." Clara's lips curved faintly. "You saved more than just a boy. You saved what little goodness he had left." "Enough riddles," Damien said flatly. "Why are you here?" Matteo stepped forward. "We represent someone who used to owe you a debt. He's repaying it now in information." Adrian crossed his arms. "Information about what?" Claire looked at Damien. "Someone's rebuilding the Bratva under a new name. They're planning to strike again. Not at you this time, at her." The air in the room shifted instantly. Alina's breath caught. Damien's voice dropped, cold and sharp. "Who?" "They call him Varenko," Matteo said. "He was one of Sergei's lieutenants. You killed his brother. He wants revenge." Adrian's expression hardened. "How do we know you're not leading him to us?" "Because," Clara said, "he already knows where you are." Within an hour the house was locked down. Guards doubled, alarms reset. Adrian mapped out escape routes while Alina packed Luca's essentials with trembling hands. Damien moved like a machine. Calm, efficient, his mind already calculating threats and outcomes. But when he stepped into the room where Alina stood, his composure cracked. "I promised you peace," he said quietly. "And I can't even give you that." "You gave us more than peace," she said. "You gave us a chance." He shook his head. "If anything happens to you or to him." "Nothing will," she said, gripping his hand. "We've come too far to be afraid now." He met her gaze, and for a moment, something fierce passed between them. Not fear, not despair, but determination. "Then we finish this," he said. That night the sky turned red with fire. The first explosion hit near the front gate. The sound ripped through the air like thunder. The second came seconds later, closer this time, shaking the ground beneath their feet. "Move!" Damien shouted. "Adrian, get them to the safe corridor." Luca screamed as glass shattered. Alina grabbed him, shielding him with her arms as debris fell. Smoke filled the hall. "Damien," she shouted, coughing. "I'm right here." His hand caught hers in the dark, pulling her through the haze. "Go." They ran through the narrow service hall, the sound of gunfire echoing behind them. Adrian returned fire, covering their retreat. They reached the underground corridor, a narrow passage leading to the old vineyard tunnels. "Take them," Damien barked. Adrian hesitated. "And you?" "I'll hold them off." "No," Alina said, her voice breaking. "Not again." He turned to her, eyes steady even in the chaos. "If I don't stop them now, they'll never stop coming. You can't fight the whole world." "I don't have to," he said. "Just the part that still wants to burn." She clutched his sleeve, tears cutting through the soot on her face. "Come back to me." He leaned in, his lips brushing her forehead. "Always." Then he was gone, disappearing into the smoke and fire. The tunnels were dark and cold. Alina held Luca close as they moved, guided by Adrian's flashlight. Every distant explosion made her heart lurch. "Where's Papa?" Luca whispered. "He's coming," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "He's right behind us." They reached the end of the tunnel, a steel door leading to the lower road. Adrian pushed it open, scanning the horizon. "Go," he said. "Cars ready." But before they could move, a gunshot echoed from the vineyard above. Alina froze. "Stay here," Adrian ordered, running toward the sound. "Adrian," she called, but he was already gone. A minute passed. Then another. The silence was unbearable. He turned to Luca. "Stay with the car. Don't move." Then she ran. The vineyard was in ruins. Fire licking at the vines, smoke twisting in the air. She found Adrian first, crouched behind a stone wall, gun drawn. "Alina. I told you to. I'm not leaving without him." He cursed under his breath but didn't argue. "He's up there," he said, nodding toward the main courtyard. "Outnumbered." He didn't think. She just ran. Through the smoke, through the fear, through the chaos, until she saw him. Damien stood in the center of the courtyard, blood on his temple, his gun empty. Around him lay 5 men motionless. One more, tall, broad, face twisted in rage, aimed a weapon straight at him. "Damien," she screamed. He turned at the sound of her voice, just enough to see her before the shot rang out. The bullet hit him in the shoulder, spinning him to the ground. "No," she cried, sprinting forward. He grabbed a fallen pistol and fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The man fell, the gun clattering from his hand. Alina dropped to her knees beside Damien. His eyes fluttered open. "I shouldn't be here." "Stop saying that," she said, pressing her hands against the wound. "You're not dying. Not now." He tried to smile, his voice barely a whisper. "You always were stubborn. Because someone has to be." She tore fabric from her sleeve, pressing it tighter. "You promised you'd come back to me." "I did," he murmured. "And I will." "Then stay awake," she said fiercely. "For me. For Luca." His breathing slowed, but his hand found hers. "You remember what I told you?" She nodded, tears blurring her vision. "About building something that doesn't burn." He smiled faintly. "You already did." By dawn the fires were out. Adrian's men swept the grounds, rounding up the last of Varenko's soldiers. The estate was in ruins again, but alive. Alina sat beside Damien's bed, exhaustion written across every line of her face. His wound was bad but not fatal. He would live. When he finally woke, sunlight poured through the cracked windows. He looked at her and smiled weakly. "You didn't listen again." "Never do," she said softly. He reached for her hand. "It's over now. For real this time." She nodded. "And if it's not, we'll face it together." He squeezed her hand. Together. Weeks later, the Voss estate began to rebuild. Slowly, stubbornly. Luca ran through the gardens again, chasing butterflies between the new vines. Alina stood on the balcony, the scent of earth and rain in the air. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Luca's getting strong," she said. "He gets it from you," Damien said. She turned, meeting his gaze. "What about you?" "I'm learning," he said. "To live. To breathe. To love without blood in the background." She smiled. "How's that going?" He kissed her forehead. "Better every day." That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the 3 of them sat together on the balcony. Alina, Damien, and Luca, watching the city lights flicker to life. "Papa?" Luca asked. "Are the bad men gone?" Damien looked out at the skyline, then at Alina. "Yes," he said softly. "They're gone." Luca smiled, curling into his father's side. Within minutes he was asleep. Alina leaned her head on Damien's shoulder. "Do you ever think about what's next?" He smiled faintly. "Every day. And I think about peace," he said. "And how for the first time I don't have to fight for it." She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat under her cheek. "Then hold on to it," she whispered. "I will," he said. And as the stars emerged above them, quiet, unburning, endless, Damien Voss finally kept the one promise that mattered most. He stayed. And that was just the beginning. If this story pulled you in, if you felt the danger, the love, and the fire, don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button to step deeper into the world where loyalty cuts deep, love defies fate, and every heartbeat could be the last. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were Alina? Walk away, or stay for the man the world feared? Subscribe, like, share. Because every story deserves to be felt.